following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco and across the moat from Oakland. As promised, and I deliver most every week, I talk to some of the most interesting people on the planet, and today is no exception. Returnee Jeff Kallman. How are you, sir?
So far, so good. How are you doing?
Oh, good. We talk a lot of ball. We talk Met ball. We talk baseball. We talk Angel ball. And I left it to you this week. What is your preference of conversation?
Well, in some cases, we talk about addictions, like crisis addictions, like there's a certain team out in New York who, if they can't find Crisis Addiction Anonymous anywhere, and a quick Google search will tell you that there isn't one, the Mets need to create it post-haste. They need to stand up before that group, and they need to...
What is the current crisis they're going through?
They seem to be addicted to it every game. They need to be standing up before that first meeting and saying, "Hi, we're the Mets. We're crisis junkies." It's not just that they were good at winning at the last minute, but they can't resist. They win the hard way. They lose the hard way, and sometimes, even like on Thursday night, they put up 6-0 in the first inning, expand those leads to 10-3 after 7. And then let the other guys knock on the door of overthrowing them. How do you get a game that's 10-3 after 7 innings and you still win it only by 2 runs?
Well, you scare the crap out of your fans. That's the one thing they did.
And that's one way to look.
Which is incredible because the bullpen the Met bullpen over the past 4 weeks, I would say, is improving with the
They were improving by inches. And here's the thing: on Thursday night, they were up against a team who also has bullpen issues. Never mind that half the teams in the major leagues this year are having bullpen problems, but the Mets and the Braves' bullpen problems were sort of getting chronic, and so were the Nationals, who the Mets played last week.
What made it worse, that last game with the Braves that you're talking about was an absolute must-win. It's okay to say the Braves are a better team right now, this, that, and the other thing, but you can't get swept. And they ended up not getting swept.
Lucky to get that win.
Yep.
But they had chances in each of the previous 2 games to win, and they couldn't do it. It's not like the Braves just bastinadoed them.
That's right. That's exactly right. And what really disappoints me is because their hitting shoes were on in that last game. I think Alonso was like 5 for 5.
And he started the barrage with a 3-run homer in the top of the first.
Right. But they didn't carry it over to that first game last night in Kansas City.
And Kansas City should have been a weekend's worth of just fielding and hitting and pitching and target practice for them. These are not the same Royals they played in the World Series.
So basically,
in fact, only one of those Royals from that World Series is still on the team, and that's Alex Gordon,
who is rumored to be up for grabs. There are 2 or 3 outfielders, and I mention that
I believe he may be becoming a free agent after this season.
Right.
But he's also in the sunset of his career, so I don't know who's going to grab him, and I don't know what his payday is going to be. I don't think it'll be anything like the payday he might have expected a few years ago.
That's true, but you could get someone on the cheap who's in what I call the surprise years. A guy like Alex Gordon, you say the sunset of his career. I'd rather have a guy in the sunset of a career like Alex Gordon has had than a rookie who is doesn't fulfill expectations. Let's put
he
it
would
that
still
way.
he would still be valuable to a contender who's looking for an experienced center fielder, A, to plug in when they need to give a younger regular a rest, or B, in an emergency, and he can play in other outfield positions as well. So he's not an unvaluable, I should say, pickup for a team looking to contend next year. It's just a question of who's going to pick him and for how much money.
Yeah. Well, speaking of teams who are looking to contend, Juan Lagares has come alive. And if he could keep that going, and again, a contender for the wild card, this, that, and the other thing, are they contenders by traditional standards? Perhaps not. But in the way things are in baseball,
until last weekend, the Mets made themselves contenders all over again, just about out of nowhere. Now It's a question of, can they stay even in the wild card contention? If they can't, they are built to contend next year. What needs to happen is a couple of piece exchanges here and there, but what most needs to happen, they need people in the brain trust and at the plate, on the field, and on the mound who don't overthink. Mickey Callaway's wounding flaw, among others, is that he's an overthinker. Wednesday night, he had Steven Matz rolling, including retiring 14 straight. Let him bat for himself in the top of the seventh. He singles his way on base with 2 outs, and he comes around to score a tie-breaking run. And he still had gas in the tank left. He had only thrown 79 pitches to that point. Callaway decided to hook him and go to the bullpen. And then Pete Alonso, overthinking at first base, scrambled hard right for a ground ball that was going to the second baseman and belonged to the second baseman, and as a result, there's nobody to cover first, and the Braves started overthrew them. I don't blame Lugo. I don't blame Lugo. I'll tell you why. It was not Alonso's play. Alonso should have been staying put, even if he took a 2-step cheat to his right just before the contact of the bat on the ball. Alonso should have stayed where he was, and if he had, the throw comes to him at first, and he can throw home and get a double play. There would have been plenty of time for him to do it.
The harm of Lugo running over there just in case.
He should not have had to. It should have been Alonso staying in position. That ball was going right to Lagares. Lagares throws to first. Alonso can then throw home. Boom, double play. That one is on Alonso. That was a bad rookie mistake.
Well,
very bad rookie mistake.
I contend that your first step has to be instinctive. You get over there to cover, and when I say just in case, you also have to judge the ball on the spot. That's what you're trained to do as a first baseman. You have to have spot judgment. As a pitcher coming off the mound, anything hit in that direction.
Lugo took a few steps off them as the ball traveled. I saw him take about 3 or 4 steps off the mound, but it shouldn't have even been his problem. It should not even have been a topic. Alonso made a bad rookie mistake and cost the Mets a likely double play. And if there was still going to be a man on third with 2 outs, that man on third is almost nothing. That's a rookie mistake that's on Alonso entirely.
Okay.
And he'll learn from it.
He'll learn from it.
The good ones always do. Good ones always do.
And
now, one bad thing about the Kansas City series is that just by the way the rotation shakes out, the Mets are throwing their best guns at the Royals and won't be able to throw at least one of them at the Indians coming to town. They may be able to send Marcus Stroman and Steven Matz to them, but that's not quite the same as sending Jacob deGrom and Noah Syndergaard. But those guys are pitching this week in rotation.
Say this, though, Jeff, the Mets are okay starting pitching-wise 5 days a week.
Of course they are. But Marcus Stroman, as good as he is not Jacob deGrom. Steven Matz is not Noah Syndergaard.
No question. But I'm not.
I mean,
like I say, I'm
the 1960s Dodgers had a great starting staff, but you're not going to say that Claude Osteen is Sandy Koufax or Bill Singer is Don Drysdale. No way.
No.
So just by the way the rotation worked out, and I couldn't see any way for Mickey Callaway to make any adjustment without causing a problem.
Yeah.
It's just a shame that against the Royals their best guns go, but against the Indians they don't have their best.
Are you surprised at LaGarza's resurgence as I am?
I am, for one reason, his injury history. He's not the same player he used to be.
Right. But he has looked good, and not the same player he used to be still makes him defensively the best center fielder the Mets have, far and away.
He still covers some good ground in center field, but funny thing, earlier this year you could make a plausible case that the Mets were playing too many position players out of their proper positions, and there were some problems out there. But I've noticed that lately an outfield of Jeff McNeil before he got hurt, and Michael Conforto,
and
J.D. Davis, they're a good outfield. They're a solid outfield. They're not spectacular if you don't count Jeff McNeil jumping into the nets in Cellular Field in Chicago a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I love this guy. I love his versatility.
But these guys cover ground. These guys get to balls. These guys can throw. They've made themselves into a solid outfield.
True.
How solid they remain is up for grabs. But right now,
stuff off the bench, and they have Nido, who's terrific defensively and really not a hitter. And
no, he's not a hitter. His ability that makes him able to play Major League Baseball is his ability to work with pitchers. Right.
Anything you see on our pitching staff? When I say our, me and Freddie Wilpon it's our team, but it's his on paper, and I'm the behind-the-scenes guy. My Mets, anything
Oh,
new?
So you are the one.
I'm the one.
All right, Mets fans, get sick of them.
I didn't mean to announce it this way. It was kind of impromptu, but much like the president, I'll stand up there, and you never know what's going to come out of my mouth. It's just...
All right, Mets fans, sick them.
All right. As well they should. We Met fans need someone to sick all the time. Hey, let's get on to something else besides the Mets, and that
I'm thinking of what's that?
I was going to say I wanted to touch on your expertise about how the Angels are doing and what's happening. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Halos for a number of reasons. But so I'm always looking for knowledge about current Angels, and following the career of Mike Trout has really been a pleasure, hasn't it?
It has, but right now, unfortunately, for both Trout and for Angel fans, the Angels are Mike Trout and 25 other guys.
Right.
Unless you
did get 2 hits the other day.
If you could find a way to put 9 Mike Trouts in the lineup, these Angels are going nowhere, and they won't go anywhere until they solve their pitching issues, especially their starting pitching issues. Until they can find pitchers who are not injury prone, these Angels are going nowhere. That's the bottom line. They have the best player on the planet. They have a guy who's already a qualified Hall of Famer in that player, and they can't put a winning team around him? What's wrong with that picture?
Yeah, and they've been saying the same thing since Albert Pujols.
Well, they couldn't have anticipated Pujols having the leg and heel issues that he's had since about a year after he became an Angel. But put Pujols aside. The Angels right now belong to Mike Trout. And Mike Trout, unfortunately, does not have a say in developing the organization. So until or unless the Angels get some decent pitching that is not going to be spending half the time on the injured list, they're not a topic. And Mike Trout is going to be languishing as the greatest player in baseball on a mediocre team. It's not his fault, but that's just the way it is and the way it's likely to be unless there's a top-down overhaul in organizational thinking and an organizational roster building. That's the bottom line.
Hey, Jeff, I was thinking of something totally off the topic, and just to get to know you a little bit on these airwaves, what was your deciding move to go to Vegas? What precipitated that?
It was economic more feasible for a suddenly single man to live there. I was living in Southern California, but my marriage broke up and I couldn't afford to live in Southern California single. That's the bottom line there.
Okay.
I came to Las Vegas and I fell in love with Las Vegas.
Okay.
And that's all I'm going to say about it.
How does Las Vegas living differ from California living?
Well, I don't have easy access to the beach anymore, but that's about it.
Okay. All right.
It's financially simpler to live in Las Vegas. That's all I want to say about it, really.
Yeah. And the tax situation is totally different in Nevada. Pleasingly
so.
Yes, I can well imagine. All right, Jeff, what besides the Angels, we talk Mets, we talk Angels, what do you want to converse about? What in baseball stands out? And I will ask you the question around this. What proposed rule changes do you think are likely to be enacted?
I don't really know, only because the jury really isn't in quite yet about the experiments in the Atlantic League. Though I could be persuaded very easily that the longer I watch actual or alleged Major League umpires work, the more I begin to think lustful thoughts about robot umpires.
Okay, and that would be basically.
I was watching several games this week where even if teams in question didn't put up a fuss about it, I was seeing obvious strikes balls, obvious balls called strikes, and it's ridiculous.
Right. Well,
I mean, I've thought for a long time, going back to the action that broke up the original umpires union, that there needs to be an end to this nonsense about umpires and their individual strike zones, and they need to be calling the rule book specified uniform strike zone.
Could not agree more.
Baseball is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all game, but the strike zone should be. I grant you the variation because of the size of certain players, but that's the only variation that should be allowed. We should not be reading about how wonderful it was that Greg Maddux could throw a pitch and hit the corner on a postage stamp. He shouldn't have had to worry about that. We should not be worrying that, oh, God, when you go back to the old umpires union, their action began because baseball wanted accountability from them. And at the time, Sandy Alderson was working in the commissioner, and he was quoted as saying he got concerned when he realized that teams were more concerned about who was umpiring the next day than who was pitching. And there's a certain extent to which that's still true today.
Yeah, well, bettors tout their games on the strike zone or the next umpire's strike zone or that umpire's strike zone.
Oh, so, it would not surprise me. It would not surprise me if I could be a fly on the wall in the video room of any given major league team that when batters are watching pictures and their tendencies, anticipating the next time they'll face those pitchers, or pitchers watching the tendencies of hitters for the next time they face them, that they're also watching and making notes on the umpires.
Right, both offense and defense.
And what floors me sometimes is, maybe you've noticed this too, but an umpire who is not consistent behind the plate, or is as notorious behind the plate as the Angel Hernandezes or the Joe Wests or the C.B. Buckners, when you watch them as base umpires, it's a different story.
Really?
Nobody complains half as much about how they perform as base umpires as they do when those guys are behind the plate.
Huh.
I've seen many a game where Joe West, say he was working first base or second base, he was as sharp as a tack as a first base or second base umpire. Behind the plate, it's a different story. Same thing with C.B. Buckner. You put him out on the bases, the guy runs a good game. You put him behind the plate, don't be shocked that there's going to be an argument.
I hadn't noticed that, and I'm going to look for it. But I wanted to make something clear.
Keep an eye on the more controversial plate umpires, and then compare that performance to how they're doing when they're in the rotation around the bases.
And also, Jeff, tell me if this isn't true. When a fan judges whether or not a call is proper by whether or not the other team protests, that's inaccurate, because due to the rules in baseball, managers only have X number of protests at their
managers are allowed only a certain number of challenges to calls.
That's right. So maybe this call is bad, but they have to save a protest to the ninth inning. They still can't protest balls.
They still can't protest strike or balls. Have X number of challenges they can issue prior, I think, to the seventh inning, and then X number between the seventh and the ninth. And I think it's a little more liberal in the postseason. Now, that said, when a manager challenges a call, usually it's because of a really close, really tight, fast play, and it didn't look clear to them that the umpire's call is the right call. And watching what goes on, and usually while the umpires put the headsets on and are in contact with New York, you'll see on a television broadcast maybe 7 or 8 different television camera angles of that play. You'll get a good idea, reasonably, of which the calls will go, whether it'll be upheld or whether it'll be overturned.
Right.
So,
well, I contend, too, that because the people making the calls in New York are basically umpires as well, either retired umpire. Am I right?
They are.
They're more likely on a close play to want to stand up for the umpire that makes the call.
I have not seen that happen yet. I know people who were concerned about that when replay began to more generally used. I haven't seen any real trend that says that the former umpires manning monitors in New York are leaning one or another way, or trying to stand up for their form.
No, it's all subconscious.
There's nothing of the sort. I watched whenever. That's one thing I pay attention to when the headset is on. There's been a challenge. I have seen as many calls overturned as upheld. So I don't see a pattern of anything that would suggest favoritism out of New York on behalf of the umpires.
Oh, that's good.
And most major league umpires, they're trying to do a decent job. I mean, not all of them are as self-possessed as a Buckner or a Hernandez or a West.
No,
so
that would be impossible. Those people would be impossible to
granted,
top.
But I haven't seen any real indication that the crews in New York monitoring balls and these challenges. I haven't yet seen any tangible indication that they're favoring the umpires, because as often as not, when the call is overturned, you won't see the field umpires looking disappointed. And I noticed a lot more times now. Before it goes to New York, umpires are asking for their crew. That's been a good thing. Go back to the 2004 American League Championship Series. If you remember in a couple of those games, umpires were asking each other for help before relay, of course, but they're asking each other for help without either the Red Sox or the Yankees asking them to do it because they wanted to be here. They were getting it called right. They knew the magnitude of the series. I think that's a good thing.
Okay.
So I have not yet seen any shenanigans in that regard, and I hope I never do.
Yes. Jeff, this was a good show. I so much enjoyed talking ball with you. Tell us one more time about Throneberry Fields, your blog.
Throneberry Fields is named for the first New York Mets anti-hero. Marvelous Marv Throneberry should be remembered because he was the classic anti-hero. He was a counterculture before there was such a thing as a counterculture, but he was essentially, from everything I've read, just a sweet guy off the field with a good sense of humor about himself, who never forgot the fans who made him a counterculture hero.
Right. And let's not forget the man who made Marv Throneberry famous and iconic.
Throneberry Impossible?
Yeah. Who
made Marv?
Richie
it was Ashburn on one side and Len Schechter of the New York Post on the other side. Ashburn was the one who first began calling him Marvelous Marv. Schechter picked up on it and wrote it in his newspaper writings about the Mets.
And let's also not forget, because we go from here to there, that Leonard Schechter was the editor and basically the man, the glue of the book by the late Jim Bouton, Ball 4, that is
he knocked Bouton's first two books together. He took Bouton's diaries and notes for Ball 4 and knocked it into book shape. And then he helped Bouton edit the follow-up, which was about the controversy over Ball 4, and that book was a wonderful book. I'm glad you didn't take it personally.
Yes. Then he wrote 2 or 3 more about starting a team of his own, about coming back as a ball player.
The comeback as a ball player, he addressed an anniversary Ball 4 called Ball 5. He was once upon a time the co-commissioner with his wife of a recreational league that played baseball by 19th century rules.
Oh, did not know that. What was it called? Rounders, am I correct?
No, it wasn't called Rounders. It was baseball played in the late 19th century.
Okay.
And one time, I think in the 80s, he was involved in to restore an old minor league ballpark, and he spoke about that.
And he was also an entrepreneur.
He helped invent Big League Chew. He and a teammate on the Portland Mavericks during his comeback. They got an idea while idling in the bullpen. God only knows that pitchers and bullpens have a lot of time to think. And they got an idea. Tried to think of what could they do regarding chewing tobacco that wouldn't be chewing tobacco, so they got some gum base, mixed it up in a pan, shredded it, made it look like chewing tobacco, but it wasn't tobacco, and they saw the idea rigging.
And he was also the man responsible for big league trading cards. You could send Jim Bouton's company a picture, and they will make a trading card card out of it. I had that done several times with my kid growing up.
In more ways than one, until his illness, Bouton was a jack of all trades. He was even a ballroom dancer with his wife for several years.
Yeah. And, Jim Bouton and I both grew up as New York Giant fans, and he tells the story of his boyhood hero who was my boyhood hero, Al Dark.
And I remember that he told about Dark brushing him off.
He did indeed. He said to him, did Al Dark, he said when the 16-year-old kid comes up to him, or the 10-year-old kid, he goes, "Take a hike, kid." And Boughton remembered it all those years later and wrote, in this book, "Take a hike, kid." And that's why when you talk about players who don't try to big league their fans, it's always so nice in contrast to that kind of attitude. And Trout is famous for that.
I watch Mike Trout and Bryce Harper spending time with fans before games.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You and speaking of Bryce Harper, did you see what happened on Wednesday night?
No, I didn't.
It was.
Oh, he hit 2 home runs during the week.
Well, he homered twice in a Wednesday night with the Philadelphia. All the while, not knowing that there was a standoff on the north side of Philadelphia involving a narcotics suspect having a showdown with police, exchanging gunfire and wounding 6 officers. And the following night, Thursday night, Harper comes up with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 9th. After the Phillies began coming back on the Cubs, the score was 5-3 at the time, and Harper hit what's called the ultimate grand slam. That's defined as a grand slam. You end the game, and your team was down 3 runs. It's been done 30. It's now been done 30 times. Harper is the 30th one to do it.
Wow.
And if you saw the home run,
the season has been turned around by, like the Mets with Phil Regan, the Vulture, an 82-year-old icon coming back. The Philadelphia Phillies are doing that with Charlie Manuel, and he's older yet.
What Charlie Manuel did, I think, is doing with the Phillies is this. Manuel is not either an unknowledgeable or a foolish man. What the Phillies had this season for a hitting coach was John Malley. Now, John Malley had all the data they could possibly use, but he couldn't get them to apply it properly. Manuel seems to have said, "Yeah, I know about all that. You guys know all that. Now get up there and relax. Keep the knowledge, but don't start pressing up there. Go up to that plate with what you've got in your head and just relax." Harper himself talked about that.
Yogi used to say, "See the ball, hit the ball."
It's not that simple. I mean, John Malley showed these guys all of their best tendencies, all of their best possible approaches, and their best possible. Charlie Manuel gets them to relax the plate. You've seen the results since he came back, and Harper hitting that grand slam. I mean, yeah, he likes to talk about. He goes up there thinking nothing and feeling nothing. But he also has knowledge that it takes him there. He knew that Derek Holland, the Cubs reliever, is a sinker ball pitcher who throws hard and fast sinkers, and Harper was expecting sinker balls, and he waited for the one that would come right where he could put a bat on it. He got better than he expected. They say put a meal and a stewardess on that one. As the way he hit that ball, there should have been astronauts on it. But it was just. He looked like a guy who was waiting for. He's throwing sinkers. I want that sinker in his. I'm going to make him throw it to me, and he did.
Right.
And Harper, everybody is harping this year, no pun intended, on the fact that he's only a 250 hitter. Well, guess what? If that's the case, he's the most powerful 250 hitter in the game because, according to Fangraphs, he is number 3 in win probability added this year, behind number 2, Mike Trout, number 1, Christian Yelich.
Wow.
Bryce Harper hits when it counts.
Astronomical company there.
It is. And
Imagine the publicity Yelich would get if he were playing in New York.
It's not like he's unknown.
No,
Christian Yelich is probably one of the best-known players whose team is in the northern Midwest today. Everybody knows who he is. Harper, this year, yeah, he's only got a .250 traditional batting average. But in the high-leverage situations, this is his slash line. .322 batting average, .385 on-base percentage, .655 slugging percentage. To break that down a little bit more, when he has men on base at all, he's hitting .342 with a 1.062 OPS. When he has runners in scoring position, period, he's hitting .378. When it's second and third and 2 out, he's hitting .333. When it's the bases loaded, he's hitting .333. So that was before he hit the grand slam. So when you're talking about hitters in high leverage, and you have to remind yourself, high leverage / clutch hitting isn't strictly late in the game, last couple of innings, and a close score. High leverage can happen anytime. When he homered in the first inning on Wednesday night, it was a high leverage situation. He had a couple of guys on base, including one in scoring position. Boom.
Right.
So when you're talking high leverage, yeah.
It works in reverse with pitchers. There are times a closer should be in there in the sixth if it's a high leverage position.
Well, forget the designated role. You want your best relief pitcher, the guy who is your best work out of that bullpen. You want him in there, even if it's tight in the seventh inning, even if it's tight in the eighth inning, even if it's not a quote save situation in the ninth inning. Buck Showalter got burned to a crisp by refusing to bring Zach Britton in the 10th inning in the, I think it was the 2016 American League wild card game against the Blue Jays, because it wasn't a safe situation. He's our closer. We bring him in with a lead. No, you've got two guys on base and a power hitter coming up, and your trip to the postseason is on the line. You need a stopper now. Right. You needed him maybe 5 minutes ago, but no. He left. Britain wasn't even a topic. He left Ubaldo Jimenez in, and Edwin Encarnacion hit the 3-run homer that put the Jays in the postseason.
Well, that's akin to what Callaway has done many times, especially earlier in the year when Diaz had this role where I'm only going to use him in strictly a closer position. That came to bite him in the ass 2 or 3 times.
At the time, Diaz had not been. The one reason Diaz has become. He has been. I don't want to use the word misuse. I think he's been contradictorily used too often.
Okay.
And
I saw it at times early on when he refused to go, when Callaway refused to go to him because it wasn't the tapes.
Right. Yeah. That mistake has burned better managers than Mickey Callaway. Mike Matheny got burned that way in the 2014 Division Series. He had Michael Wacha on the mound in the ninth, and Wacha was rusty because he'd been on the disabled list for much of September. And he has Trevor Rosenthal, who at the time was a shutdown closer.
Take notes on these things.
I wrote about them.
You're so insightful as to the inning-to-inning strategy that managers use.
I watched those games. I wrote about them, and certain games just stay in your mind. And when a manager with a possible pennant on the line leaves a shutdown relief pitcher in the bullpen because, quote, we save him for when we have a lead. So he left Michael in, and Travis Ishikawa hit the ball at the top of Levi's landing, and that was the pennant-winning homer.
Right. And another thing, with all this dependence on analytics, shouldn't that be a natural progression in baseball, that the matchups are more important than the inning? You know what I'm saying?
The matchups in the inning should have been perfectly open for those situations. The matchup you wanted in the 2016 wild card game was you should have wanted your best pitcher out of that bullpen dealing with Encarnacion. The matchup you should have wanted in that 2014 division series was get your shutdown closer in there. You need a stopper now, and if you're worried about a lead, you may not have one to protect. You may not have one.
Right.
You're going to lose. You're going to lose the pennant unless you put this guy in. And it's funny. So much of what has come about as analytics is really a mathematical refinement of the way that people like Branch Rickey and Casey Stengel thought years and years ago. Especially Stengel, since we're talking about relief pitching. Stengel, at the last day of 1949, didn't wait until the, quote, proper time to bring in Joe Page. The Red Sox are pushing. He needs a stopper like now, so he brought Page in the third inning. And Page went the rest of the way, kept the Yankees in the game, and they ended up winning it and the pennant.
I wish Case had done better in 1960.
Many a Dodger years later would tell a guy they played against in the 50s, why do you think we were able to kick your butts so often? Because Branch Rickey, among other things, hired a guy named Alan Roth who made every possible kind of graphic and statistical tabulation of every player in a Dodger uniform. And discovered things that nobody else was thinking about.
In the 50s.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He hired Roth. I think it was in 1949-50 when he hired Alan Roth.
Whoa.
I think it was then. So yeah, these people were way ahead of their time.
Yeah, but the man most ahead of his time is Branch Rickey. Let's do a show on him real soon.
One of these days we should. There was a lot more to Branch Rickey than people remember, in both good and unfortunately bad. But I don't know if baseball has yet had a mind equal to his, except maybe Bill James.
Yes, but Bill James, no, he had a great mind, and he did change the game. But what Branch Rickey did has to include developing the farm team, the farm system, the Continental League, coming back as a consultant with the Cardinals later on. He was absolutely unreal when you think about it. So let's do that.
Branch Rickey was one of a kind.
We'll both study up this week, and we'll both come up with some tidbits on Branch Rickey for the next show.
That'll work for me.
All right, Jeff. Thank you. The guest is Jeff Kallman. The guest is a integral part of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of the Comfortably Zoned Network, but, it averages out to pretty damn good. So thank you for listening, everybody, and thank you again, Jeff, for being here.
Oh, you're welcome.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Back at you real soon. Adios.